probably our longest lasting argument we've ever had.
You said that we should leave out some of the details though, because she thinks that what I did to her was so bad.
It seems like there's a disconnect in how the situation is being perceived when he says
She thinks that what I did to her was so bad.
it implies that her feelings are more an opinion than her actual experience. Please understand, validating doesn't mean agreeing with your partner or whoever it is that you're validating. It's rather part of creating a safe emotional space, and using words that are not belittling, diminishing, or invalidating someone's experience can be a great start to create it.
3 times or so within a weekend, Nathaniel had mentioned working out to me. Why don't you go work out? Or when you do work out, these are the workouts you could do. And at the time, I hadn't gotten back into working out yet. I had a baby 3 months ago.
Ooh.
I'm taking care of 2 other kids.
That's
We're moving
soon.
into this house. Like, there's a lot going on.
Please understand, encouraging health is not a bad thing. If someone loves us, chances are they will worry. But this seems a bit different. If I'd counsel them, the first thing would be acknowledging and agreeing that she is not overweight or doesn't seem to be in any danger associated with gaining weight. So my next question for him would be, since this is not health related, in what way does her weight affect you? If he mentions attraction, then I like to have a one-to-one session with him in which we properly go through the changes his wife has to manage and how the main focus right now is not being attracted to each other but supporting each other. They just had a child, like that's their priority. Sexual activity or arousal are not always a guarantee throughout a monogamous relationship. Humans go through all sorts of periods of depression, childbirth, accidents, illnesses, and so much more that are going to affect sexual intimacy. So I would discuss with him how he can focus more on being a father for the next period, but the choice of working out or not has to come from her.
This is what I'm hearing. I don't like the way you look. You need to go work out.
And you only want to know where it went from there. It really got to me when she started telling me all of these things that I was saying to her, but I actually wasn't saying to her.
Right.
She was just hearing them through her woman filter.
Okay. There's clearly a gap between what is being said and what is being heard, which can lead to frustration from both sides. He became upset because she was interpreting his words rather than listening. However, it's important to recognize that she has already started to internalize this lesson by stating, "This is what I'm hearing." This to me shows her effort to avoid assumption and how she's already changing a behavior that she knows her partner doesn't like. Yet this new approach also requires reassurance from him to reinforce that her effort to understand him correctly is appreciated and acknowledged. Usually I would encourage both partners to express gratitude. One partner can say, "Thank you for sharing your need or your preference," while the other can thank them for taking it into consideration. Also, I don't love terms like woman filter. They can be easily perceived as belittling, so since she's putting in an effort, I'd like to see him do the same.
Sometimes you just have to do what you got to do to show your spouse that you care about them.
I truly don't understand what this means. You gotta do what your partner understands as care to show care, in case anyone got it confused. So a good question for him would be, are you aware of what your partner perceives as caring actions? When it comes to her, one of the questions could be, did you ever clearly communicate what are ways in which you like to receive care?
Marriage is such a sacrificial love. You gotta lay down yourself and your wants and what you think.
And even what makes complete logical sense.
Both of them are unclear. If I'd have to translate, she's saying, these are my emotional needs in this marriage and sometimes you have to sacrifice yourself to fulfill them in the same way I do for you. And he's saying, I don't understand what you mean. I'm already sacrificing myself. What more can I give you? Because probably he sees being the main provider of the family as a sacrifice instead of a chosen role. I would clarify with her what are her emotional needs, and I would clarify with him what doesn't make sense and if he is happy with being the main provider. If he enjoys it, because maybe he doesn't like it and that's okay.
Things that I needed. One, I feel like I have really become a girl of words of affirmation. This is not Mr. Words of Affirmation. He doesn't give those freely.
You gotta earn it.
What? Alright, so it sounds like she did communicate her emotional needs, which answers my previous question. Words of affirmation is a good one, yet don't be mistaken, the love languages are not just 5, and we need a continuous, predictable manifestation of them to feel bonded to someone. However, I would like to understand, what does he mean with "you gotta earn it"? This is an emotional need, it's not a negotiable. Nobody needs to earn the right to feel loved and cared for. I would ask him if he feels like he needs to earn his affection from his wife, as maybe there might be some underlying resentment there.
If leading up to this workout conversation, he had been complimenting me or reassuring me that he does like the way that I look, I feel like I would have taken it a lot better and not been so hurt by it. When I'm thinking about it, I'm like, wait, he hasn't complimented the way that I look, and now he's talking about me going to the gym. Like, he doesn't like the way that I look. Like, that's where my mind went, which is so sad. Like, you never want to think that about your husband.
Of course. What she describes can be seen as a confirmation bias, but I see this as a form of self-protection, more specifically anticipatory anxiety, where a person prepares for negative outcomes based on perceived patterns to protect themselves emotionally. Her deduction is far from emotional, actually seems to be quite logical. He didn't compliment me, he started telling me more and more to go to the gym, obviously he doesn't like me. So her deduction helped her identify the potential issue in order to prepare for potential hurt or betrayal. The fact he also thinks she has to earn words of affirmation makes this situation that much worse. Women already go through a lot when dealing with the fact that their bodies have changed. You pointing it out doesn't help. Like, she's aware, don't worry about it. I'd focus on helping her voice her fear, and I like to help him redirect his efforts from telling her what to focus on to focusing on how to reassure her. Let me know if you want part 2. Stay golden.
I needed an apology. I could move on way faster from something if I were to get an apology. You don't have to apologize for what you said or what you did, but bare minimum, you could apologize for hurting my feelings. So you could at least say, I'm sorry that what I said hurt your feelings, this is what I meant, or whatever.
If we'd be in a session, I would validate her. Of course you need an apology. That is part of conflict resolution and healing the emotional wounds opened during the conflict. And apologizing, as she's pointing out, is not about admitting fault, but about acknowledging the impact of one's actions on the other person's feelings. I would ask her how would receiving an apology would make her feel, what would be the benefits.
Yeah, so she, and this happens a lot when we get in our arguments, that she needs an apology.
I have questions. Since when is requiring apologies to move on from hurt something to avoid? Somehow he seems to imply that she shouldn't need an apology, but that simply is not something he should decide for her. Receiving an apology is what will help her feel validated and understood. This is part of her emotional needs. So my first question would be, why is that seen as an undesirable thing by him? My second question to him would be, in what situation does he expect apologies from her?
Like, her life depends on it in order to move
Don't
on.
be dramatic.
Almost like...
Wait, this is supposed to be helpful, don't be
It
dramatic.
is, but it's a dramatic story.
He already had quite some passive-aggressive comments throughout this conversation, but now it's getting to her because she doesn't find that accurate. Probably what he means is that this is very important to her, but yet again his words are interpretable as dismissive and judgmental. I would ask him why her expressing her needs seems like a dramatic story in his perspective, as it's important to understand if we're using the correct terms here, like dramatic story.
You know, Sutton gets to the point where I really, like, in her mind, she's like, I can't move on without an apology. And you didn't say that, but is that true?
Oh, mister, don't put words in my mouth.
Yeah, but it's true sometimes.
It's important to acknowledge that he's assuming her thoughts and treating them as if she said them, which is exactly the same behavior he asked her to avoid, which she avoids, by the way, as we've seen before. This type of inequality will destroy a relationship in time. So remember, it's very important to offer the very things we ask for. The fact he continues to say, but sometimes it's true, even while she's denying that that's not true, to me would be a cause of major concern, to be very honest with you. Because my first question to him would be, what does she need to do for you to believe her? And what's the reason you feel comfortable ignoring the same boundaries you asked for?
No, what I told him is, I can move on to that apology, but I can't promise you how long it will take me.
Okay. And wanting an apology is no big deal, no problem. But you shouldn't need one.
Why? And why is he deciding what should and shouldn't be needed? It seems to me like this distinction is being made to justify not giving her an apology. So again, my question would be for him, what is the reason behind distinguishing between wanting and needing an apology?
Like, my takeaway from this whole experience was to not be so dependent on an apology, which I don't feel like I am.
I'd have to stop her right here because we need to acknowledge that there's some gaslighting going on. And I'm not saying he's doing it intentionally, but it is happening, so we need to talk about it. We need to start by agreeing that needing an apology from someone that hurt us is entirely normal. Just because he has a different opinion doesn't make him right. It just means that they have to learn as a couple to respect each other's differences and processes.
So let me ask you a question. What do you think is the most Christ-like way of living? Do you think it is being able to move on?
I think it's
from
do
an
unto
offense?
others. Do unto others.
Okay. So do you think it is to be able to move on from an offense with or without conditions?
Okay, I don't know what the Christ-like thing to do would be, because to be honest, it could be anything. But I would invite both parties to try and see their relationship outside of religious context, at least during our sessions together. Because while striving for Christ-like behavior is admirable, it should not be used as a way to avoid responsibility or self-improvement. His wife is not Christ, as we can see. She most probably will never be, nor will he. So let's try to keep the conversation in the realm of what we can control. This is not about what is the most Christ-like way, but this is about helping our partner feel seen, heard, and validated within the relationship, which I'm sure Christ would agree with.
I do think it is important for you to be able to move on without having to have an apology. But I don't think it's fair to put a timeline on it.
It is healthy to not require an apology only if we know we will never receive it. Like, yes, don't put your life on hold because you're waiting for an apology from your 8th grade bully. But when we're talking about your husband, things are supposed to be and feel different. Apologies become part of showing mutual respect. And not only, but there seems to be an additional pressure to move within a certain timeline. That is very heavy to manage.
Because they don't know how much it hurt your feelings or like how deep the hurt went. I wanted to just step away, so I took Levi and I went on a walk, and then I came back and he was like so mad. He was like, "Where did you go?" And I told him, like, "I'm just walking around the neighborhood." He's like, "Don't ever do that again." And I didn't know, but he had like some trauma attached to that. Ever since then, I haven't done that again. Like if I'm leaving the house, even though I think it's stupid, I have to tell him, this is where I'm going and this is when I'll be back.
I would encourage her to express more boldly what she means. For instance, for her to say, here's an example of something I find unnecessary but that I comply with because I know it's important to you. Can you also do the same for me when it comes to apologizing? Many times asking directly for our needs is exactly what is needed in a relationship. It can clarify your own desires and it can help your partner understand what is important to you.
When you love someone, you make sacrifices even if you think it's dumb. That was Nathan, sowing seeds of truth, love, and inspiration, one view at a time.
Yeah, they could definitely use some couple counseling.